I might expect to go 5 minutes over, but I'll try to keep us to the hour completely. And we can drop things to continue next week if we run over. Starting things off, old business, just updates from all our technical working groups in the OSPO. And I think we got you listed first, Merchant, on policy, and then we'll hand it over to Michael to talk about the security and communication stuff, since they're both intercorrelated. Any new developments, Merchant, towards the governance policy?
I think we know when the networking team will start the working group. I'll connect to you to check if that's good date for you as well to join, and then if you agree, you will be able to publish it somewhere and start it.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'll get the announcements and get people to join in. Michael, I think this would be a good afternoon to talk about the security policy and communication stuff if you wanted to.
Sure. So just briefly, we're going to try and, first of all, on the communication side, we're going to try and take some steps to actually start to nudge people towards using more open comms. Well, by people, I mean the Cardano projects. So I think we'll just do that incrementally and see how people take to it. Expect more updates next time, probably. On security, one of the things I mean, this is really new business, but I'd like to maybe get some people together, start a little working group on security policy. We just need to say something about how we handle security disclosure in particular. Kevin Hammond is quite keen that we have something there. And it's a bit complicated because it means we need private communications channels, which just makes things more annoying. But we need to have a policy. So, yeah, I'll maybe... well, actually, good question. Maybe like a show of hands, who would be interested in being involved in that? Great. Cool.
So you got Nick, Adam, me.
I'd like to. I think we probably can't rely on Kevin for anything much, but we should definitely consult him since I think he's got a lot of opinions. But then I think that should hopefully be enough to get something down. Okay. Yeah, and we can discuss that offline, I think.
Okay, that works. In communications, I set up a call with you to get Matrix going, and then we can look at GitHub discussions as well.
Yep.
Okay. Next, before I pass to George in this, I forgot. Nick, do you want to do an intro for yourself, replacing Pat?
Sure, I can. Yeah, I have less hair than Pat, I guess is the main difference. I mean, I guess a bunch of you know me already. Yeah, I'm Nick. My current role, I'm an engineering director at Modus, so which is the company that bought Twig. In my previous role at Twig, I was also I did a lot of the initial development of the Cardano ledger. I set up the framework that the ledger runs on. I then did a lot of the integration work for sort of Cardano nodes. So I'm fairly well steeped in the core of the ecosystem, at least. Yeah. So Pat, is swiveling around to focus on some of the more commercial side of things. So asked me to basically replace him, and my interest will still be in, I'll probably be interested in getting involved in a lot more of the technical aspects of how the open source policy works. So yeah, maybe working with Michael on the security policy, which is something I think we've already talked about. And some of like, how do we actually make this a working open source project from a technical perspective. Yeah, that's the intro to me. Probably most of this meeting I will just sit here and absorb stuff and hopefully gradually learn what's going on. So nice to meet you all, or nice to see all of you again that I've seen before, and nice to meet those who I haven't.
Thanks for the intro. Yeah, to be professional on this call, you just got to do the silent nod to everything.
Welcome, Nick.
Nice to have you. So I'll pass it off to George to talk about the work on the strategy as well as the workflow for the OSPO and his weekly update.
Yes, thank you very much. I will share my screen. So we are now focusing on the same Q1, governance and foundation objectives, which is the status for each of them. We are on the phase where you see these orange lines. So we are working now to the governance model, structure, entities, and relationship, and this is still in progress. For the strategy, we are now in creation of the strategies frame and define entities and the relationships between them. In the area of functional reporting areas, we have already created that is in internal review the initial document for all reporting areas for delivery assurance. And for the policies or GitHub audit for policy alignment, we are in the second phase now. The zoom in, identify the smaller pictures about the OSPO. Of course, here it's Christian installed a new tool, and we have really new statistics about what is today in place. So that's it from our side. Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. So to George's point, next week is going to be strategy intensive. Bogdan, who's the main author of the document, comes back from PTO. So we're going to be 24/7 getting that put together, and then we'll release it for initial community feedback via Google Doc for those who aren't GitHub inclined, and then a GitHub PR that everyone can put comments to. And we'll work on a month-long revision review process before we get to that final initial draft state. And then we can use the open source committee, designate 10 minutes a week or however long the committee decides, just to discuss points through that and make sure we're comfortable with all the target areas it's going to cover. And I think we'll have some nice pictures for it too. So that's always nice. Related to project incubation policy. So I've gotten further along of realizing how much more work it's going to be than I've been envisioning. And I was originally using Hyperledger Linux Foundation models, but then went to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. I think found an example of all their documentation I would like to bring in. I did create a nice little deck that's just high-level goals that is meant to be completely ripped apart. If there's a permission for everyone to view here, let me share that. So feel free to hate everything about this deck. That's what it was intended to do. I purposely crafted it to make Michael mad, or I just intend to do that. But essentially, I probably got to work on the nomenclature. But up here, I put some initial thoughts to graduation criteria, or as we go through 3 phases, what projects should do. And that's probably where I have the most thought out into. And then an area copying off CNCF about projects that want to join, questions that they should answer or provide. And there's a lot more granularity that in concrete items that actually need to be broken out between responsibilities within Intersect, and then what Intersect is willing to adopt, how we align with that, or a community interest perspective. And the interesting bit is there's a, similar with the CNCF, there's a technical aspect that possibly brings in the technical steering committee to review and approve projects coming in. Or do we overlap that with open source objectives, or the open source committee comes together? So again, I got to work on that. This deck was literally finished about an hour ago, so expect typos and all kinds of things wrong. And the main areas I was thinking of that the incubation process should hit is defining at least the incubation criteria about aligning the goals and helping get clear defined scope for projects, hitting community engagement, both building the contributor base as well as adoption of the technology and trying to come up with standards for that. doing a transition review. So it's not just projects determine when they graduate, but that they get a review from the OSC or TSC to see that they hit certain criteria before they go up. Getting documentation transparency, and I connect that also with being kind of an advocate for Intersect's governance policies or open source best practices, whatever we put together, and then continuous improvement within this. So this is high-level, vague objectives I kind of want to hit. And the nomenclature, just for marketing purposes, I like the term builder, developer, operating, but I can change that if it's too confusing. So yeah, that's high-level progress here. The key thing is next steps mostly, which is I need to define these 5 items up at the top, which is policy alignment, levels of due diligence to be done, level of TSC involvement versus OSC, the project review process, submission, etc., project support services outlined. And the way I'm thinking about bringing this forward is building that initial stakeholder working group to approve and amend that initial draft and ideas of what I actually put in the Google Doc. Then publish that for review process for community feedback, get the working group to make amends and approve whatever the second draft is, include the TSC and amendments if they're not already part of the stakeholder working group, and then vote for adoption. Probably need to get the TSC on that too. But yeah, I'll go to questions. I know multiple hands up. Michael?
So it seems to me like the direction you're going in for criteria for entry is basically we're just going to be like, it's up to the TSC or the vision committee or it's up to the committees to basically just decide on a case-by-case basis whether something should be hosted by Intersect. Like, are we going to try and come up with a list of what sorts of projects we want, or are we just going to say it has to be aligned and the ultimate criteria of that is whether or not the TSC or something says they think it's good, that we want it?
It might be helpful to align it to what each of those committees potentially would want, and maybe align some of the projects that they will report into these committees, maybe. Or
yeah,
build
it's sort of like the difference between saying something like, we basically, the committees consider projects for inclusion, that's it, versus, we're looking for projects which are critical to the development of the Cardano ecosystem or explicitly target problems that the Vision Committee has identified or something. Like, we could try and make more concrete criteria. And I don't know if we should, but I think it could be fine to just say, well, if you think your project seems like an intersecty sort of project, just fill in the form and the committees will decide.
Well, off of that too,
reasons.
One of the comments you made that I think to elaborate on too is looking into the CNCF example. I actually like their idea about how what I call the building phase is a low risk, low reward, where it's kind of like it's an experimental thing. There's less Intersect involvement, but it helps bring projects to a certain level of maturity and some minor support services. And there's lesser review that goes into that. But if you're going to go to the developer and operating phases, there is a due diligence and there's a lot more concrete things that you have to have because it puts more of Intersect services on the line.
If we're going to do that, though, I think we should have, I don't know, like a kind of up or out kind of thing. Like, we don't just want to have a random blob of sort of semi-dead project sitting in this initial phase.
Had some metrics.
If they're gonna enter easy, then we need to be able to kill them.
There's a metrics thing like that where maintainer inactivity, lack of contributions for a certain time period, like after 12 months it gets archived or deleted.
But maybe specifically for the first phase, we could be like, if you don't exit the first phase within a year, then you exit the program.
Yeah, I think they CNCF and both Hyperledger do like an annual review process. That's how they've been able to keep their repo count under 200. So
200 is already pretty high.
Well, I think CNCF, they have... No, Hyperledger, Hart was letting me know they have 175 sandbox projects, which are all the experimental ones, and they try to keep that below 200 every year because projects will drop off because there's no adoption. So something like that. I just need to get way more concrete, but this is high level.
What stage does Intersect actually want to get involved? I mean, maybe this is an implicit question here, but one thing that isn't mentioned here is a notion of maturity in that initial gating. I mean, for projects like Apache, typically that would be you can't just come along with an idea for a project. It has to have achieved a certain level of maturity before it becomes something that is of deeper value to the community.
I think there's some implication that we might want to foster early stage projects that seem like they're going to be valuable, which kind of necessitates taking stuff at an earlier stage. I don't think it seems like we probably want to do stuff that's slightly different to the typical sort of custodial software foundations, where they kind of take on stuff that's already a thing. Or I don't know. That seems to be what people want.
Yeah, well, and the aim of this too is I want to target it to what we currently have under the umbrella or what's coming. So a good example is like the Cardano repos will probably be somewhere between developing to operating, depending on where the projects are. If they're not already operating,
most of them. Well,
yeah.
Oh well, sorry. I guess the stuff we got in that initial batch of repositories, some of that should maybe not be transferred, but yes, it's maybe not at that stage.
Oh, yeah, we got to define what stage we want to put them in. But then we have things like Govtool, which will be enabling 1694 as a support thing for it. And it's completely builder phase. It's just mature for the stage it's in. But yeah, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's also valuable that we do have this, the incubation building phase, so that we can kind of teach these external projects that have not grown up in what you guys are all largely familiar with, which is kind of the IOG, Emergo corporate bureaucracy structure for how these repos are managed, and give people that are bootstrap, little scrappy indie OS developers the path to do it correctly so that their project is viable long term, and it does have a path to be maintained and utilized as an open source. So we can leverage the existing wealth of knowledge that we have from all of you guys that have been in the trenches here for ever and a day and in various pieces. We can help spread that to the community and make a better open source community, because right now we don't have a lot of kind of guidelines for all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we haven't in the community been privy to up until now.
Yeah. Sebastian?
I just wanted to say, I mean, I've seen it like 5 minutes ago, or like before the meeting, briefly only when you shared the slides. The names are way too ambiguous, because like building and developing means the same thing, and operating, you can operate also earlier, and ideally they would kind of give an idea already what this brings to you, having been in this stage, or what kind of maturity. I mean, I think it's an incubation process, right? Means it kind of starts small and ends big, or it starts experimental, it ends very mature, it starts very like low key with not many processes, a small number of people, and in the end it is basically involved and well, anyone could participate. So I think these kinds of dimensions needs to be somehow captured by the names, because there's way too much text on the slides, and I would only read the stages, right? If I would be interested in like, hey, what's this incubation program of Intersect? Am I interested or not? And if it's all just super vague the same, then it's harder to kind of get excited about it even also.
Well, I didn't want to steal their direct terminology. I just woke up this morning and thought those words sounded cool. So I'm open to change them completely.
We go with Nick's one. That's good. Everybody knows it.
Works for me. But yeah, I'm thinking the people of interest to this are going to be Nich, Sebastian, Adam, and Michael for doing a working group through this doc, right? If y'all have time to devote to this.
Sure.
And march in if you're free. But
a bit busy at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, anyone else keen?
Anyone else want to join? I'm opening it up even to community, not specifically just the committee. Okay. I'll keep it to those 5 at the moment. Whoever can join can join.
Hey,
I'll
it looked
start-
like Daniel was talking and he's showing unmuted, but we couldn't hear anything you said, Daniel, or at least I couldn't.
Yeah, you're not making any noise.
I can only see 9 screens, so. Well, I can get you involved, Daniel, if you'd like to. And okay, that concludes the old business. New business. There's nothing new to add to the security policy stuff, right, Michael?
No, I think I said everything that was to say there, really.
Okay. Nick, this is your proposal for a sustainability policy.
Yeah, I mean, this was just me coming in. So I guess this will overlap a little bit with the stuff I think Michael's been already talking about in terms of governance. You know, is it governance or sort of sorry, I haven't come on all the names yet, but effectively how projects will be governed. But the relevant thing here is, you know, basically ensuring that core critical components are sustained when you know running as open source projects. So things like the consensus network layer, as they transition out from being maintained by IOG towards community involvement, one of the key things we need to do is ensure a certain level of basically organizational memory and working knowledge about the details of those, and that's the kind of thing that may come from sort of open source involvement, but it may be a very explicit requirement that as different people come in to work on small subsets of this, then nonetheless we'll need to be a core of maintainers who can basically gate contributions, who can review, who can make sure that things are aligned, and ensuring that group exists should be an explicit responsibility of sort of Intersect. So it's whether we have a policy about how do we determine, and that those people may need to be paid explicitly to do those roles. So the thinking behind this was basically, yes, we need to have a policy about how do we make sure that a certain level of support is provided, particularly in sort of core components that need to be maintained.
I agree with that. I mean, one of the goals is the sustainability of the Cardano open source project. So, and most of it, if we do have any concept of it, it's just verbal or knowledge on the top of our head, but it needs to be pen to paper.
Well, I think Nick was saying that we can't necessarily always get pen on paper versions of all the knowledge, and it's quite expensive to produce also. And so, to some degree, we therefore just have to be very proactive about ensuring we have significantly overlapping periods before we lose people in which they can convey their knowledge, and also that. Oh, the other thing that I think we briefly discussed was we might want to ensure that when we make supplier contracts, it's explicit that knowledge transfer is a desirable activity that people should be spending time on. So we don't have a situation where like, well, I know everything, but I'm only paid to work on this one thing, and that's not teaching you how the code base works. So I guess I won't do it. That would be sad. And I think most people would probably do it anyway, but maybe we can do better than that and be clear that it's desirable.
Yeah, I think both of these things, right? You need to write stuff down, but that is equally, that's not going to, particularly for the more complicated parts. Even full documentation is not going to be enough to allow someone to come in and truly judge whether, does this contribution, and this will overlap with security as well. so one of the key things from the security perspective is there will need to be a core of people who can assess the security implications of changes. And that's not something that's going to come from documentation immediately. Sorry, Adam.
Oh, no, you're fine. I raised my hand after you started talking there. But yeah, I think Michael already covered a lot of this in the working group charter, and that's kind of what I was designing the voting policy around as well, is that we can't rely on goodwill to pass on the tribal knowledge, because otherwise we're going to get into a lot of trouble. So we can't be like, oh yeah, this guy was up for re-election, didn't get nominated, he's totally going to stick around and do his best to help the new guy get up to speed. Or this guy who was a core contributor got fired or moved jobs, how much of his time is he going to give to helping that transition? So the more we can have everything documented, whether that be pen and paper or screencasts or video recordings or whatever amount of knowledge we can get, I think is critical. It has to be part of being a mature and or incubating project. If we look at it back in this concept of how we incubate projects, we got to make sure that knowledge share is a very critical part of that.
But also the thing with people leaving, it's like a bus factor thing, right? We need to get ahead of this problem before it arises, right? The point at which you have one maintainer and they've quit is too late, right? You're already in a very bad situation. You need to notice a year beforehand and do something about the problem then.
Yeah. So I think, do we need to put it for a vote for formality to form a working group around it? Or is everyone in agreement?
The other thing is, or does this fall naturally into one of the existing working groups?
Well, one is strategy. I kind of think it intercorrelates, but it's a separate focus altogether.
I don't think the working groups need to be super formal, right? Like, it's really just us deciding that some of us will get together offline and talk about something separately from this committee. That's not. They can die and be created very easily.
Well, yeah, it does seem like this touches all the other areas of the individual kind of working groups that we've discussed so far today.
Seems like a good reason to not try and jam it into one of the others and have it be its own thing where people can come in.
Well, for my tracking purposes, because I have a project management tool, I'm tracking committee objectives to make sure we meet them. So for my purpose, I'll format it as a separate thing, but we can make it an offline process. Simple.
One thing that I wanted to add is that it's also it's not a thing that one does and it's done. It's a continuous effort, and that requires actually proper culture that people value this kind of things, sharing the knowledge, documenting things correctly, and Intersect can also play a role here, as it will be probably negotiating some kind of contract with whoever will be the maintainer of a given project, and that could be a part of actually such an agreement, especially if some funds are taken from the treasury to a given project, then there are some obligations one needs to provide, and that could be one way to actually sustain it, because it is a lot of effort. It's not just something that can be after. So
agreed. This also is going to connect to other committee functions too.
Yeah, and working groups. And that's actually also how we start our networking working group. It's like we think like there are not really a lot of people who know what we the networking team are doing. So let's start with actually sharing the knowledge and maybe describe a bit more technically how things look like, why things are done this way, and yeah, so it's also a related thing.
Okay. So action item following this, schedule a meeting with most of y'all here. Nick, I guess I'll let you lead the coordination effort because you're also our TSC rep in the future.
Well, that's not official yet. That's
well, okay. Off the record, even though it's in the recording. Well, so we'll have to get TSC involvement and eventually the vision committee, wherever that comes into, just because this is their work turns into contracts and that overlays with sustainability.
Yeah.
So might help to put out a doc of key points we want to focus on and then focus the meeting around that. So I'll get a meeting with you, Nick, just so we can highlight that out and then schedule the wider call.
Sure.
Okay, next.
Is he thinking or did he freeze?
I think he froze. Well, let's say then the next thing. Oh, he's unfrozen. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, lost internet for some reason. So next is I'm gonna pass it off to Lorenzo. He had a proposal he wanted to run by the committee, and I'll let him describe the request. But I'll move the testing criteria to next week's call. It's to go over, now we have the strategy out. What key points do we actually want to test this against in the pilot? I think it's good areas to cover and get more in the weeds about. So over to you, Lorenzo.
Okay, I felt it was my turn. That's why I overran my mic. Okay, cool. Thank you, Christian. And thank you for having me here to share this. So I know some of you, not all. So here on the Intersect side, I lead the product team, and one of the few things that my team is also working on is this first set of governance tools, which we are calling Govtool. So some of you might have already tested that on Sancho Govtool tools. So what I wanted to share here today and get initial feedback on is a decentralization strategy, and I will also explain what we mean by that. So how many of you are familiar with Govtool or have used Govtool on this current version? Okay, we got a couple of people. Okay, so let me give a little bit of context. So the SanchoNet is now up and running since a few months, and it does allow community to test some of the initial functions related to governance. Govtool basically gives, let's say, like an interface to that, so it allows the community members to test those governance features like delegating to a DREP, registering as a DREP, voting in an interface that is simple to use. And also is going to expand to cover all the steps of the governance process. So now we are adding features related to proposal discussion of chain, and we are expanding that. So that's a little bit of concept about what it is. Now, Govtool, or this first version that we are creating, is going to be just the foundation layer. So we are creating a little bit of support on every part of the governance process, so that once we get to hard fork, everyone has a way to participate. But after we create this support, we want to make sure that the community that is using this also owns these tools, and they can maintain it themselves. They can grow them, they can expand them. So it's not just like a small team working; it's the whole community, and actually the people that will use them that can take care of that. So this is where it comes to decentralization, like strategy. Let's see if maybe I have some slides that I've been using, but I don't know how much they will make. They will add value or simplify what I'm saying. So let me see if I can open them. Okay. And then when you can see my screen, I'm also not sure which page I'm sharing. Can you see my screen? Also, I can't see you, so just give me a notable sound.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so when we talk about decentralization on this side, we are thinking mostly about like open collaborative development, but not just like the development of features, like the whole, like basically distributing the decision-making process of what does need to be discovered, what does need to be designed, what does need to be prioritized, what does need to be developed, what does need to be fixed. who writes contracts for this stuff to be done. So it's the whole process. Whatever we are doing now, how do we make sure that that's taken care by anyone that is actually using these tools? So we need to decentralize the whole thing. So we need Govtool has pillars, so delegation, voting, proposal discussion, and governance action outcomes. And also we are creating a constitutional committee portal. So all this stuff, these are tools, right? We need to find a way to distribute the ownership of this, so the community does know that they own this and they can take care of that. I think this presentation is useful up to this point. The rest is just basically I have it here in this mirror boards. That's where I want to get feedback. A little bit more context also about Govtool. So we have pillars there, right? So on purpose we broke down the whole Govtool into different sections that they don't necessarily need to bother each other when they are worked on. So they're pillars, so they're closed within themselves. They talk to each other through like reading and writing information on chain, but they can live by themselves. So different people, different builders can potentially work on each of them. So we have the proposal discussion one, which has proposal submission, comments on proposals, and submitting the governance action on chain. That's one. And then we have the voting one, where you see the governance action, you can see them and vote on them. Then we have the delegation pillar, where you can register and delegate. And then we're going to have one where you can read the information about the governance action that have gone through this process. So that's more or less like an introduction of what I have here. And then I have the bit where I want to get your feedback on. But before I get to that, I think it makes sense to check if you guys have any questions about like what is the context of Govtool and what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I have a question. Under delegation and voting, both of those say outsourced. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, sure. So there's so we started this work on the governance tools mid of last year, right? So we started to work on this as we were creating Intersect. So we identified through a tender kind of process builders in the community that can support this. So right now the delegation and voting are currently worked on by Myra Network. So they're the one that are building this first version of this. And awarded simply means that once we grow more as Intersect, we now have a process for grants. So those, for example, the proposal discussion pillar has been given out as a grant. So now there is the We Deliver team is working on them, and they've been announced and they started to work on it. So that's the difference. Outsourced simply means that we had like a tender process, and awarded simply means there was like a grant process for that. And the last one is going to need to be awarded as a grant later on. So there's going to be like people submitting applications, and that's how it's going to grow. Okay, so I think like there is a lot of questions. So the feedback that I would like the input that I would like to get from you is on the initial strategy that we've been discussing internally, and I need to start to open this up. So effectively, the idea is that so we do believe that the most important thing to get these tools decentralized is to make sure that we decentralize the emotional ownership of these tools. So they are owned by the community through Intersect, but I think we need to make sure that the community knows that they own them and they can contribute in them and they can maintain them. And this will also allow us to then decentralize the practical work. So this is the high level kind of strategy that we have in mind. So we need to make sure that people know that they're there, people care about them, and then we need to get their help, potentially through an initial working group, to structure how this decentralization process might work. And I think in practice, decentralizing, yeah, someone raised the hand or sent a message. Yeah, Adam?
No, go ahead. I'll wait until you're ready. I just wanted to, I have some comments there on, unless you're ready for them.
Yep.
This came up because yesterday I suggested that we move a new repo that's being developed in the CIP editors branch into Intersect as well. And the first question that Michael asked was, okay, who's going to take care of it? So, and I think that was an excellent question, right? Because it's fine to say that like some Intersect entity is going to own a repository, but who is actually going to take ownership of maintaining it, merging pull requests, who's going to be the administrator. So I think that's the first step in this incubation process, in this decentralized ownership process, is what does that process look like for finding your core maintainers, getting them on board and bought in, and then kind of, and then how do we welcome random person X from the community to become one of those people, right? Like what is that path for anybody to say, I want to become a core contributor to Cardano node or to Hydra or Aiken or anything else? That's a very fundamental question that we need everybody to think about and potentially come up with answers to. But I think that's going to be your first biggest hurdle, as long as the development process is IOG et al. Are making this Govtool and we're going to give it to you guys, or we're going to give out a grant to XYZ developer and they're going to do this thing. How does that translate to Adam? You're also allowed to come in and be part of that. How do we frame that correctly so that people feel welcome to come and contribute?
100%. And Michael, I'm going to go to you, Andres, maybe just to cover that bit 1 second. So here, the thing that I want to get the specific feedback on, I mapped out each step of the software development process, so from initial discovery to maintenance to everything, right? So everything that we think that we are covering today. And then below each of the steps, add a suggestion of who can manage this. Might be like a working group, might be yourself guys, might be a facilitator, might be us as the Intersect team doing something, might be specific builders. So yeah, every part of this process needs to be decentralized. Now, in my opinion, we have 2 ways to say that we have successfully decentralized this. So one way would be we have those 4 pillars that I showed you before, and then we say, okay, each of those has been given to a community builder, and they are owning that fully. So they are, on one side, they're taking care of the bulk of it, and then they're also allowing other people to contribute into these open repos through the process. The best option would be to have some of that, but also to allow to have a process structure. I think in GitHub itself, maybe through bounties or even like someone that just want to contribute, and anyone can say, oh yeah, I have this new, I found a bug, just fixed it, or there is this new thing that we need to work on. I took that bounty of 10,000 ADA and I took care of that. So yeah, I think that the point should be like all of this, because the community, I see this in this way. The Cardano governance is the governance of Cardano, and is the government that the community creates for them, for something that they're part of. So it makes sense that they own also the tools and the process to maintain that, right? So it makes sense that everyone is able to contribute. So yeah, maybe we'll go through these steps and you guys can help me understand if those make sense. Yeah, Michael?
So where does the decision making happen?
Exactly. That's the thing that I'm trying to figure out. So our goal, as I said before, is this. It's not us, but we need to distribute the decision making. Now
someone has to make a decision, right? At the end of the day, you have a master branch repository. Someone clicks the big green button to merge pull request or to release the software. That is a thing that has an effect, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, so that's the thing that I want to discuss. So let's maybe go through that. So I have a few bodies, I'm calling them, that can operate in this different bodies should make different decisions depending on the step of the process. So I have like a working group that I would like to create. Interested members, the Intersect team, you guys as the open source committee, anyone in the community, a contractor or like a builder member of Intersect that might be working on something, and then someone that might facilitate this process. So I'm kind of spreading them out here. So let's go through this and.
So I guess like just to kind of like jump ahead, but like my follow-up question was going to be, the governance policy we wrote for open source projects proposes like a fairly lightweight, but not, I don't know whether you consider it decentralized decision-making policy, which is that you have a committee of the committers of the project and they make the decisions. And yeah, I guess my question is, do you want to just do that, or are you specifically looking for something more than what that offers?
I'll be honest, I don't know if I have read that. So if you guys have a document dedicated to that, if you can send it over, that would be great.
Very good start.
Yeah. So Christian, maybe if you can send that over to me, I will definitely have a deep read on that. This is like the very early stages of this. So the goal is to gradually get work through this as we get towards the end of the year. But I think in practice it's something like that, but also something more advanced. So if you're gonna have like a committee like yourself, you're gonna have to make some decisions in some direction, some more sample. Maybe you owning the actual repos, and then you can say, yeah, this is good, this is bad. I'm gonna merge that, and that's not gonna be there, or that might be there. There might be like a working group that takes care of maybe defining some of the scope for each of these pillars. So okay, let's go through this. So you guys can help me. Yeah, Nicholas, go on.
Yeah, this is just a general comment again, that's saying, you know, if we're looking at sort of around 200, that actually something that both the, I guess the project incubation process and the, you know, and the sort of sustainability should look at is you can't actually allow too much variability in how, you know, all of this is managed. That, you know, there's going to basically need to be a, you know, a fairly small number of variations as to how each project can be managed, you know, if it's incubated into Intersect.
Yeah, 100%. I think like that's what I wanna align, like the additional ideas that we had with what you guys have already discussed, right? So that I know if those make sense. So yeah, let me see if I can find a way to share this easily with you so that it's you guys can have a look, because I think this board here is closed. But I think I can create one where you guys have a password and you can join as well. I'll make this in the community space. I'll call it Govtool OST. So I assume I'm gonna get a lot of your helpfuls in the future. So it makes sense for this to be here. Here we go. And let's see if I can add a password. Okay, the password is always Intersect. Just trying to keep this secure. Can you guys check if you can access this so you also can see this? Maybe you can also follow me and add notes as we go through. That would be really cool. Let me just make this a little bit cleaner because this is just brainstorming stuff. And now I can have it. Okay, this is much cleaner.
I think I missed. What was the password?
Intersect, all lowercase.
All lowercase. Okay.
My previous password was password, but I decided to level up my security levels a little bit. Yeah, so I see that you're here, so that's great. So if you see here down here in steps to decentralize, I got every step of the process, I think. So for example, starting from the beginning, we have the definition of what needs to be done. Again, this is a product, right? It's a tool, so it's some research might need to be done, some discovery maybe come from the bugs or the feedback that we received. And initially here, we're thinking, for example, 3 bodies might work on this. So there might be like any interested member that could go work to Bantis or the working group. Yeah, just speak. I cannot see your. Okay, someone send me a link. Yeah, sorry. Yes, and here we go. Oh, yeah, you got it. Thank you. So yeah, for example, this is the first stage here, and then we're going through backlog creation, so understanding what feature or what does need, like which part of the research needs to be taken care, which feedback do we want to work on, which bugs do we want to actually action. I think that we can have a dedicated working group that is focused on governance tools, and then they can give these to Intersect members or even community members through a bounty, or they can do that through like without this, because someone might just want to fix something. Yeah, just pick up because it's fine.
How many people do you think are going to be involved in this? Because we've already described like 4 working groups. Like this seems like a enormous amount of bureaucracy for a single open source project, like a colossal amount. And like for many open source projects, you know, they don't even meet at all. Like maybe we can get people to get together and meet like in one place, maybe. But
yeah,
having a ramified number of working groups for processing many different things, like this is just not going. If we're gonna, this is gonna be a thing that's going to be staffed by volunteers, i.e., people from the community. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. Again,
Intersect is already planning to have, in my opinion, far too many of such bodies.
Yeah, again, I don't know how that could work, to be honest. So that's why this is the early stages. That's why I'm kind of brainstorming and checking what do you guys think. So first of all, these tools are going to have a budget, right, allocated to it, because these are the governance tools connected to governance, right? So that kind of helps a little bit, I guess. And also, I think there's going to be just one working group, so a group of people that maybe like 5-6 people that are interested and knowledgeable to be able to almost act as facilitators, to almost act as like a product, you know, a product like engineering team, so that they can say, actually, we need to build this, this, and this based on feedback, and then they put that out to the rest of the community as tasks or bounties. So we can say there is that bug to fix. There is X amount of money there. It's open. Whoever wants to pick that up is there. So something like that. That's why I was saying, for example, when you think about, we can jump to the development part. So the development part, I think, includes also the design of what needs to be done both on the architecture side, but also on the interface side. And then you need to fix small bugs, big bugs. You need to create new features, and then create all new areas. So then, like for designing stuff, like kind of structuring thing, again, there could be like a task or a bounty potentially, and that could be given to anyone, right? For small bugs, same thing. For big bugs, something is like something that I don't know, really went wrong. Then we can give that to a particular builder that can go through a normal kind of grant process where they can submit an application. New feature, same thing. It might be like a bounty, or maybe it could be like a control like we do with grants. So say like use this new part to build in the delegation. Like now we're building an explorer feature, right? So that could be the same. And if there is a whole new part to be built, like I said, there is a new step of the process that we haven't considered before, and this working group might say, oh yeah, there is a need there. People are just, they started to use the governance process, and there is a step that we have missed, and there's a whole new part that needs to be built. Then we say, okay, then the working group can say there's X amount of money allocated to it, and you can put that out for tender, and anyone can apply. So something like that.
So I guess the thing I want to say is this bit seems like this discussion about. So it seems like what you're looking for is both. You're talking about kind of like the process of how Intersect allocates money to development work, right? That's kind of we're not, and a lot of that is not Govtool specific, right? We'll come out. There needs to be some kind of process by which Intersect is going to pay for stuff. And I think I'd been assuming a lot of that would be big contracts, but it seems to me that what you're proposing here is not really specific to Govtool. It's a mechanism. You're saying, well, maybe the Intersect working groups should have the power to put up bounties for addressing particular small chunks of work.
I think if you can reuse that everywhere else, it will be cool. But in this case, I'm just thinking about the governance tools, because I don't know if we have other tools right now, like completed products that we can send to this process. But yeah, if you can reuse that.
I mean, we have literally all the Cardano projects, right? Like we have dozens of projects that you could potentially put up bug bounties for.
Yeah, so that would be great. So then if we can use this like as the guinea pig, and if this then works, then you can definitely use it. Because if you do have I think like if you do have a group of people that is interested in kind of discussing what does need to be done, and then they can open up that conversation to other people, and they have a budget connected to them, and they can kind of with processes they can define what budget goes where. Yeah, and then if that works, then we can use it for everything. This is just like a smaller thing, and we can expand it. Why not? That would be really cool, actually.
So this
I mean, have
actually,
you spoken to I don't know who's responsible for like the decision, the designing how Intersect is going to give money to people, but probably you should be talking to them about this, because
yeah, this is not necessarily just like Intersect. Like again, the governance tools are as similar to Cardano, right? To Cardano itself, to all the products that you have there. So this is not an Intersect product. We are building, we are creating the foundation for this, but this is the community thing. So we want to create processes so that they can actually take ownership of it.
Adam, you had your hand up.
Sorry, Adam.
yeah. So I think this is just a matter of vernacular, and we're talking past each other in a couple of different ways. What this sounds like is like a either a project or a meta project as defined in the scope of the OSC charter that you wrote, Michael. And that project as a whole might have some yearly allocated budget. And so its PMC, I'm going to nominate Lorenzo to be the initial chair of that project management committee and figure out how they want to divvy it up, right? They can say, we're going to spend 50% on core development, and then the other 50% goes to these bug bounties. But this sounds like, again, where we need to define who is that initial the project management committee. I think you're calling it a working group, but I think you need to really, like Michael said, you can't just.
Like, no, I think we have both concepts, right?
Well, let me bring some clarity to it real fast, because Intersect has two strategic pillars, which is governance and the Cardano open source project. So Govtool is going to be on the same level as that meta project as you were alluding to, Adam. But there's going to be two different focuses to this, where you'll have the whole working group thing, product working groups, and Govtool will have one associated with that. And then you'll have your project management committees. You just got to figure out the scope of where each of those go. Because the product working group will be where you're getting the community input and you start decentralizing the product backlog and ideas, and funding through that goes to the vision committee or the TSC, depending on whether it's continuity or not. And then you have the project management committee, which will do more day-to-day ops, and they may have an allocated budget from the TSC to do their stuff, and whoever the contracted suppliers are. But one of the key things that they're wanting to do is, right now Govtool is kind of centralized in development, and they want to decentralize that with multiple suppliers, and that may be different facets of it, where one does build, one does testing and other stuff. So yeah, quick context.
Yeah, I think, yeah, 100%. I think like also if we call this now a working group and then maybe it becomes a committee or something else, I think that's, I think nothing speaks right. So I think like the thing that I was thinking is that there's a lot of people in the community that have much more knowledge than just one person about this. So I want to definitely bring some people together and start to think about this. And again, I'm starting with you guys because this is going to be a matter also of sourcing this properly. So just not having the code available, but also having processes so people can actually do something about it, right? And I think once we have a group together, then we start to refine this. We say, okay, maybe just one working group is not enough. Maybe or maybe this, and then we need to structure this in a certain way. Yeah, so I think like maybe the thing will be good. Now we are at time here, so you have access to this. I mapped out more or less, I think, what are all the steps. So one thing that would be great is to understand if these are all the steps, especially on the development and the maintenance part, or if we missed anything, and if you can also existing, maybe I think someone was mentioning in the chat before, a successful project that has already done this, just one. I know it's very complex to distribute all this work, so I can, if you can share that, it would be cool. I can start to kind of review that and kind of starting it. And also below here, these yellow post-its are the dark yellow are ideas of who can take care of that bit. You can happy to answer questions or to get ideas, so you can add comments or leave post-its, so we can kind of work this out together. And as someone was saying earlier, if this kind of works for Govtool, I know there's a lot of steps, but if we find like a really clean process for this to manage these 4 small pillars for these 2, then maybe this small test case, then we can expand it to something more complex, and that would be kind of cool, I think. Yeah, so I think like let's do like this. I know that we are at time. I don't want to bother anyone to stay longer. So you have access to this board. I will share some of these high-level thoughts also in the next Intersect town hall to understand if there's already someone that wants to kind of meet in a group and kind of brainstorm this stuff. So I assume that maybe some of you guys would really love to do this. So I'll send you a form to join that as well. And then there's just going to be like a group of people meeting. Then if we call that a working group, we call that something else, we can figure that out together, I think.
Appreciate your time, Lorenzo. Thank you. Any last minute questions? I'm leaving a 1-minute window. It's fast since we're over time.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think like it's already a lot of great feedback, and that helps me things as well. And I'll bother Christian to get some of these policies that you already have, so that I can read through them and some of these work examples. Someone that has already done it, because that would be really cool to see.
Yeah, I know some of this has been shared in the past. It's just a reverb. It's been lost with all the stuff we've had going on. So I'll get it rehashed. But
Yeah,
appreciate the time.
Thanks for presenting, Lorenzo, because it does also show how big one single project really is when you try to break it down into all of its constituent pieces. So thank you for presenting. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. It's really great.
Yep. Thank you all. I'll send out the recording and publish shit on GitBook today. Trying to be more active on being immediate about it. But thank y'all. See y'all next week.
See you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.